Before the legend was born, there was only war. Wojtek, the bear who became a hero of World War II. May 1944, the Battle of Monte Cassino, a 6-month-long meat grinder designed to break the will of the Allied armies in Italy. Up a treacherous mountain path, under a constant rain of German shells, men from the Polish 22nd Artillery Supply Company are hauling 100-pound crates of explosives to their guns. It's a deadly, exhausting, almost impossible task. But then, through the smoke and chaos, you see something that makes no sense. Walking upright on its hind legs, towering over the soldiers, a 500-pound Syrian Brown Bear takes a crate of live artillery shells into its paws. It turns, and with a steady, unhurried pace carries the explosives towards the front lines. He doesn't flinch at the explosions. He never drops a single crate. His name was Wojtek, and he was an officially enlisted private in the Polish army, with his own rank, serial number, and paybook. This isn't a fairy tale, and it's not propaganda. This is the 100% true story of the bear who went to war. And it raises one absolutely insane question. How on earth did this happen? The answer to that question doesn't begin in a forest or a zoo. It begins in the frozen hell of a Soviet gulag. Before Wojtek, there were his soldiers, and to understand them, you have to understand the hell they survived. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Over 1 million Polish citizens were rounded up and deported to the brutal forced labor camps of Siberia. They were starved. They were frozen. They were worked until they died. But 2 years later, history took a bizarre turn. Hitler betrayed Stalin and invaded the Soviet Union. Suddenly, Stalin needed allies. In a desperate move, he granted an amnesty to the surviving Poles, allowing them to form an army. What emerged from the gulags was a skeletal force, an army of ghosts, barely alive but burning with a single desire, to fight their way back to a free Poland. Their long journey took them south to Persia, to regroup and re-equip. It was on this dusty road, surrounded by men who had lost everything, their homes, their families, their country, that they stumbled upon an encounter that would change their destiny forever. An encounter that began with a small, wriggling sack held by a little boy on the side of the road. The soldiers stopped. They were curious. The boy opened the sack, and inside was a tiny, terrified brown bear cub, no bigger than a loaf of bread. Its mother had been killed by hunters. It was alone and starving. These men, who had endured the worst of humanity, looked at this orphaned creature and saw a reflection of themselves, a fellow refugee. They bought the cub from the boy for a handful of canned food and a Swiss Army knife. They didn't have a plan. They just knew they couldn't leave him behind. They named him Wojtek. In Polish, it means he who enjoys war, or more poetically, the smiling warrior. But there was a problem. Wojtek was too small to eat. He kept rejecting their food. In a moment of inspiration, a soldier found an old, empty vodka bottle, filled it with condensed milk, and fashioned a teat. The cub finally began to drink. He slept in their tents, cuddling with the men for warmth. He became their child, their little brother. For soldiers haunted by the ghosts of Siberia, this tiny, warm, living creature was a miracle. A reason to smile in a world that had given them nothing but tears. But as Wojtek grew, so did the army's ambition. And soon they would face an obstacle that couldn't be solved with kindness or a makeshift bottle. An obstacle that threatened to tear their strange little family apart. Wojtek didn't grow up like a bear. He grew up like a soldier. He learned to salute. He would steal soldiers' hats and climb trees. He developed a taste for two things: beer, which he would drink straight from the bottle, and cigarettes, which he would eat. He wrestled with the men, gently pinning them and licking their faces in victory. He was the company's soul, a source of endless joy and morale. But now, it was 1944. The Polish Second Corps was being deployed from Egypt to the front lines in Italy. As they lined up to board the British transport ship, a stern-faced port commander stopped them. He pointed at the now 200-pound bear. "Official regulations," he said. "No animals allowed." Panic. Leaving Wojtek behind was not an option. He was family. The soldiers pleaded. They argued, but the commander was immovable. Rules were rules. It seemed their journey with Wojtek was over. But the Poles had survived the gulag. They were masters of finding a way when there was no way. They huddled together, and then came a moment of pure, absurd genius. The regulations said you can't transport an animal. But what if Wojtek wasn't an animal? They marched back to their commanding officer and made the most bizarre request of the war. They wanted to officially enlist Wojtek into the Polish army. The paperwork was drawn up. Name, Wojtek, rank, private, serial number, assigned, pay book, issued, though his pay was double rations. With official documents in hand, they returned to the flabbergasted British officer. They presented the papers for one Private Wojtek. The officer stared at the documents, then at the bear, who probably gave a friendly wave. He had no protocol for this. No rule in his book covered an enlisted bear. Defeated by sheer brilliant audacity, he stamped the papers and waved him aboard. Private Wojtek was on his way to war. But his greatest test, the moment that would turn him from a mascot into a legend, was still to come. He was sailing into the inferno of Monte Cassino. The fighting at Monte Cassino was savage. The Polish soldiers were tasked with the final bloody assault. The 22nd Company's job was to keep the big guns firing, a relentless chain of supply under constant enemy fire. Men were straining under the weight of the 100-pound crates. The path was slick with mud and blood. Wojtek, who had been kept back from the front line, watched the trucks being unloaded. He watched his brothers, his family, struggling. And then he acted. He wasn't ordered. He wasn't trained for this. He simply walked up to the truck, stood on his hind legs, and held out his paws. A hesitant soldier placed a crate of live shells into them. Wojtek took the weight as if it were nothing. He walked to the artillery position, gently set the crate down, and turned around for another. Over and over again, he carried the ammunition, a fearless 500-pound soldier, working alongside the men. He was simply imitating his family, carrying his share of the burden. The sight of their bear, their smiling warrior, working fearlessly in the heart of battle, electrified the Polish soldiers. He became a living banner of their unbreakable spirit. His actions were so legendary that after the battle, the 22nd Company was given a new, official emblem, which they wore proudly on their uniforms, a bear carrying an artillery shell. After the war, the company was relocated to a camp in Scotland. Wojtek became a local celebrity. But for his soldiers, the victory was bittersweet. Poland had been liberated, but was now under the control of the Soviet Union. They had fled. They were heroes in exile, unable to go home. One by one, the men of the 22nd Company had to leave the army and find new lives. And they were faced with a final, heartbreaking decision: what to do with Wojtek. In 1947, they said goodbye. He was given a home at the Edinburgh Zoo, where he would be safe and cared for. He lived there for 16 years, but he never forgot. His old brothers in arms would visit him. As tourists chattered, a veteran would call out to him in Polish, and the old bear's head would snap up. He recognized the language of his family. Sometimes the zookeepers would let his old friends into the enclosure. They'd share a cigarette or wrestle gently, a lonely king holding court with the last members of his regiment. Wojtek passed away in 1963. In the end, his story answers the question we started with. How does a bear become a soldier? It happens when an army of men who have lost everything find an orphaned creature who has also lost everything. He wasn't just a mascot who carried ammunition. He carried their hope. He was a living, breathing reminder that even in the deepest darkness of human history, there is still room for compassion, for family, and for a smiling warrior named Wojtek.